There seems to be an inherent problem with the Lotus Esprit roundabout Series 3 with the wing mirrors. Now these tend to get loose, especially when you've been folding them in and out when you leave the car. I've found the solution on how to tighten up these wing mirrors. First off, it's important to understand how they were manufactured at the factory. Essentially, the actual glass was put on last, and the plastic backing for the glass has 3 slots in it, and on the solenoid there are 3 tabs. And what happened when they were made was that the black plastic backing plate was fitted first, the tabs were bent over, and then the glass was stuck in place, so it was a very neat final appearance. In order to get to the nut that comes loose to fix this problem, it's essential to remove the glass and the backing of the black plastic plate that holds it in place. In order to get to the nut that needs tightening, it's very simple if your glass has been broken, because there are 2 holes in the backing plate that go straight through to 2 Phillips headed screws. If you remove these screws, everything will pop out. That's the solenoid that controls the action of the mirrors and the backing plate itself. And at that point you can get to the nut that needs tightening. However, if your glass hasn't broken, then here are the steps that you need to follow. Unfortunately, bear in mind that you may accidentally crack the glass and you'll have to find and source a replacement glass. But here's how I did it. In order to get to the mechanism so that you can tighten up the nut that's come loose, you need to remove the mirror glass and its backing plate. Bear in mind that unfortunately you may shatter the glass in this process, in which case you'll have to source another piece of glass. But if you're careful like I was, everything worked out fine. Get yourself a piece of hardwood. I used a drumstick because it's tapered at one end and it's made from hickory. Now you've got to be very careful here and bear in mind that you may crack the mirror glass anyway. I didn't, I was lucky. As you start pulling the backing plate away from the solenoid, these tabs, there are 3 of them, will start to straighten out. You don't need to get them all straight because you can jiggle it around to get the backing plate and the mirror out. As you can see in this image, the backing plate has virtually removed itself from those 3 tabs that were holding it in place. Here's a close-up of that process. Now, you can see exactly what's going on inside that mirror housing. Here's the black plastic backplate that you've just removed, with hopefully the mirror intact. So the next thing is to tighten that nut that caused the mirror to loosen in the first place. Fine nose pliers work great here. It's very unlikely you'll be able to get a spanner onto it. What I did was put some Evo stick onto the spring, just so that things were held in place but not too permanently. I then followed it up with some thread sealant just to make sure. Now, here's the next step. Straighten out with your fine nose pliers those 3 tabs. Just have a loose fit with the backing plate to make sure that those tabs relocate in their original holes. Now here's that backing plate complete with the mirror, which you're now going to stick back in its original location. However, you don't want to use an adhesive that's too permanent like JB Weld or Araldite. I used black bath sealant so it will hold the backing plate and the mirror in place to the solenoid, but should you ever need to remove it, it will be an easy thing to prise away, yet it will still ride with the car very nicely. So here we are with those tabs straightened out, and you're about to place the backing plate and the mirror back in situ. Good, everything's been pressed into place. Now, of course, you need to make sure that adhesive sticks nicely. What I did was to get an old sponge, put it on the mirror glass and hold it in place with 2 strips of gaffer tape wrapped round to the mirror housing on the exterior. I then used the drumstick I used in the first shot to hold the sponge against the mirror nice and firmly to locate it for 24 hours to ensure that the sealant did its work. To be absolutely sure, I taped the other end of the drumstick so that no tension would be lost throughout the setting process. The next day, everything was perfect. The mirror went up and down, sideways, left and right. So I took everything out for a test drive, but to be doubly sure, I wrapped cling film around the whole assembly just in case the mirror popped out again, in which case I'd have to repeat the process all over again. However, it didn't, and everything's been fine ever since. I hope you've enjoyed this video and it's been informative, because until I went through this process, I really wasn't sure how this thing could be tightened up.